Hey guys, what's up? Hyperx here, and today I wanted to talk about the new content that DICE is going to be bringing out in the new DLC, They Shall Not Pass, for Battlefield 1, which is going to come out very shortly, especially if you already have a premium pass. And in order to get prepared for that, I want to show you the different FPSs that you might get if you have similar hardware to mine, and I will leave all of the different specifications of my hardware in the description. So let's get started.
We have taken objective
So before we get started, I want you to know that you can check out the current FPS that I'm running at in the upper right hand corner of the screen. So it's upon us, the new DLC for Battlefield 1, They Shall Not Pass, with a French theme, which has been long coming. We really should have had the French army in the game in the first place, but anyways, now DICE is finally releasing that DLC now. The DLC will be coming out in March, and is going to have plenty of new content, which is going to be quite exciting. So as you may know, you can get access to that DLC 2 weeks earlier than anyone else that has the game if you have bought Premium Pass, which is kind of like the Season Pass for Battlefield 1. So this DLC features 4 new maps, which are all set in France, kind of like many of the pre-existing maps in Battlefield 1, but anyways, so we have 4 new maps: Verdun, Fort Vaux, Soissons, and Rupture. So these 4 new maps, you can test them out. There's plenty of content out already on YouTube which features these maps, so I will let you visit those channels to get an idea of those maps. On top of those 4 maps, we're getting a new game mode, which is kind of like a tug-of-war where you're going to have to push backwards and forwards to get into the enemy's camp. So it's kind of like Rush, but in 2 directions, basically. Then we get some new vehicles. So there's a new heavy tank that's being introduced to the game, and as you probably already know, a new behemoth, which is a huge in the game, a 4-man tank, which will spawn and you'll be able to drive it around the map, and yeah, it's pretty cool. Finally, we're going to get some new guns, and I'm not going to list them out because that's not the purpose of this video. So basically, if you want to get more information on the new guns, there's plenty of other channels as well that already feature those weapons. Okay, so now for the performance part of the video, I'm going to list out basically the different components of my computer that I game on, and then I will talk about the different settings in game that I use to get the FPS that I get. I personally prefer reducing the image quality and the presets in-game to get better FPS, because I find I personally perform better with more fluidity. So to start off, I use an ASRock H170 Pro4S motherboard, and it's a non-overclocking motherboard because when I bought the computer I didn't feel the need for overclocking. So that brings us to our second point. I use Intel's Skylake i7-6700 non-K variant because, again, I didn't feel the need for overclocking when I built this computer, basically. So this processor has 4 cores, 8 threads due to hyper-threading, which is good for games and rendering videos. And it has a base clock of 3.4 GHz and boosts up to 4 GHz. Okay, that brings us to our third point, which is going to be a short one. I use 16 gigabytes of DDR4 memory, clocked at 2133 megahertz. And now, the pièce de résistance of any gaming computer is the graphics card. So I use an NVIDIA's GTX 1060 overclocked graphics card. So the brand name is KFA², which is not a very well-known manufacturer, but they produce outstanding quality products and for a very reasonable price. So I highly recommend getting one if you're thinking about getting a reasonably priced GTX 1060. So the advertised overclock frequency of this card is 1750 megahertz, but I've seen it overclock to 1800 depending on the temperature and different settings on the card, so it performs quite nicely. So now I want to talk about the different presets that I use and the different settings that I use in game, the graphic settings, to maximize my FPS, yet keep a very good image quality at that. So as I said, I personally prefer getting more FPS. I mean, I try to game over 100 frames per second because I find the fluidity, especially in first-person shooters, I find the fluidity really helps, and that it's quite nice because I do have a 144 Hertz gaming monitor. So as you can see here, I'm on a custom graphics quality setting, and I try to avoid using DirectX 12 because NVIDIA just isn't that good right now with that, so especially Battlefield, I would recommend just turning that off if you have an NVIDIA. Though if you have an AMD card, then go ahead, crank that up, turn DirectX 12 on. You might see some better performance. So as you can see here, it's kind of a mix between high and medium settings. So the most demanding settings here, I would say, are really the lighting quality. Effect quality is not going to affect your FPS too much unless you have many explosions and everything happening on screen, where then you'll get dips in FPS, which is definitely not what you want. Then you have the post-process quality, and anywhere from high to medium is just going to drain about 20% of your frames per second, and the game is not going to look all that much better for the amount of frame that you're going to lose. So I mean, it's just the water reflection quality and some other unnecessary things. And then so the last two settings that I have on medium is terrain quality and undergrowth quality. I could technically put terrain quality on high, but it's just I really like having those FPSs, so I decided to put that to medium. And the undergrowth quality is basically the amount of grass that will pop up or the amount of foliage in trees, so that can actually reduce the amount of frames that you're going to get, so I put that on medium. And then I put the anti-aliasing and the ambient occlusion on the maximum setting, so TAA and HBAO. This is personal preference, of course. I mean, you could technically use lower settings, but then I find the image quality deteriorates too much for the added gain in frames per second. So, but then again, that's just personal preference. So I get around 105 to 120 frames per second in game. I mean, most of the time it's 120, 115, but sometimes I'll get dips into the high hundreds. So I find that for that, fluidity is fine. But if I did go and put the Ultra preset on, I would get around 85, 90 frames per second, maybe 75, 80 on the very demanding maps. Anyways, that's my time, so I really hope this video helped you in giving you an idea of how your PC might perform with similar specs. And I will hopefully see you on the battlefield, especially when that new DLC comes out. So if you like this content, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and please leave a comment with any suggestions that you might have regarding this video or my other content. If you're interested, I just started a series on the forest where we kind of go through the different steps of surviving and everything, so you can definitely check that out. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.